we will practice one problem from chapter 10, and that problem is your performance evaluation, and we will prepare a segment margin performance report. That means we are preparing this performance evaluation for a specific segment of the company. So let's read the problem, and it's problem E1019A. Says that Digital Industries has gathered the following information about the actual sales revenue and expenses for its pharmaceutical segment for the most recent years. So these are the actual numbers, and you also have some information about the budgeted numbers. And they say that the budgeted information here, budgeted sales in units, they were budgeted that they're gonna sell 9,100 units. Budgeted selling price per unit is $85, and you know all these variable components per unit budgeted information and fixed components information. Now for a segment margin income statements, one important thing you have to separate, which is your common fixed expense. Remember, common fixed expense is kind of assigned by assigned centrally by top management, and a specific segment actually cannot control this common fixed expense. So when we're gonna evaluate the performance of a specific segment, we will just not look at their operating income, rather we will also check what is their segment margin. That means what is their income before subtracting this common fixed. So let's try to do that. I actually drew this table just to make things a little bit convenient, since I'm using Word instead of writing on hand, and then we will solve it together. So I will write down the name of the company. The problem number is E1019A, and you can write it down. It's performance report. Performance performance report for the company's Digital Industries. And you can also write it down, the name of their segment. They probably have like different segments, and the segment that we are doing now is the pharmaceutical company. So we'll also write it down, pharmaceutical company. That's the segment we are now evaluating. So I'll write it down here. Pharmaceutical segment, and if you want their year, the performance year that you are evaluating the performance, you can write down the year, and it is actually doesn't mention any year, but we'll just usually we do it at the end of the year. So I'll just write it down for the fiscal year ending on December 31st. We actually don't know that year, but that's totally fine. And then it also says all data are in million. It's better if you also mention it here. All data is in million. So now let's do the income statement. And we are actually doing two income statements next to each other. One will be the actual one and another will be the budgeted one. So let's try to do the actual one. The first table actually gives you the actual data. So for income statement, we always start with sales. So let's write down our actual sales revenue, and it's actually sales revenue. It's actually given here 866,320. So write it down 866,320, and then we're gonna subtract our variable expenses. But we do always to find out our contribution margin. So I'll subtract variable expenses, and we see a couple of variable items. One is the variable cost of goods sold, and another is the variable operating expense. So let's subtract first variable cost of goods sold. Variable cost of goods sold. Remember, this one is your heading, and then under this heading we are writing our variable cost. So variable cost of goods sold, if you see here, it's given here 143,325. And if you need to subtract anything, I prefer to use this bracket sign. So I'll write it down 143,325. Then we're gonna subtract another variable item, which is given here variable operating expenses. Variable operating expenses. And it's also given here 162,162. So we are now subtracting these two variable items from our sales revenue, and this is how we will get our contribution margin. So if you have your calculator, you can calculate it. Let me know what is your contribution margin. So I use my calculator. 866,220. I'll subtract 143, 325 minus 162, 162, and what I got is 560,833. So my contribution margin is 560,833. Now I'm gonna subtract my fixed expenses. So let's subtract fixed expenses. And we have two types of fixed expenses. One type is called direct fixed expense. These fixed expenses are directly related to that segment, pharmaceutical segment. Another is their common fixed expense, which is kind of like centrally assigned by top management, and the segment cannot control those expenses. So first, we're going to subtract our direct fixed expenses. And we have two types of direct fixed expense. One is our direct fixed manufacturing overhead, which is given here 96,300, 96,300, and another is here the direct fixed operating expense. So let's subtract our direct fixed operating expense, which is given here 17,280. 17,280. So if I subtract these two direct fixed expenses from our contribution margin, we will actually get our segment margin. Segment margin. So let's subtract these two items from our contribution margin. So 560 minus 833,000. Sorry, 560,833, and I'm gonna subtract 96,300 and then 17,280, and I got my segment margin, which is 447,253. So basically, this segment margin actually tells the performance of the pharmaceutical segment, and later we're gonna subtract our common fixed expense just to figure out that segment's operating income. So now subtract our common fixed expense, which is actually given here. If you see, common fixed expense is 14,140. So if you subtract that 14,140, and I found that the operating income is actually 433,113. And that's the operating income for this pharmaceutical segment. Operating income. So this is how you can prepare your income statement, and which is your actual income statement. Now we're gonna do the budgeted one. And since we already have that structure, now it will be actually easier to plug in the numbers. I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger so that you can see it nicely. The numbers are really tiny, so let's see if it works better, but I need to also show the whole thing together. Okay, now it's better. So we just did the actual one, now let's do the budgeted one. And budgeted one, we already have those numbers, but remember the budgeted numbers are given the units and variable items are given per unit. So we need to prepare it based on our budgeted number of units that we wanted to sell. So let's try to do the sales revenue. So for sales revenue, our budgeted units were 9,100 and your budgeted sales price was 85,000. So let's try to figure out the sales revenue. That means we need to multiply this two. 9,100 multiplied by 85. And I got my revenue. Budgeted revenue is 773,500. Then we're going to subtract our variable expenses. Budgeted variable expense, and the first item is the variable cost of goods sold. And it says variable cost of goods sold per unit is $15, and we actually budgeted 9,100 units. So if you multiply this 9,100 by 15, what I got is 136,500. 136,500. Now I will subtract my variable operating expenses. And variable operating expense per unit is given here again $18, and our total number of units were 9,100. So if I multiply this to 9,100 multiplied by 18, and what I got is 163,800. 163,800, and that's actually our variable operating expense. Now if you subtract these two items from your sales revenue, you'll get your contribution margin. So if I subtract 136,500 and 163,800 from 773,500, the contribution margin, and of course is the budgeted one, is 473,200. And we're going to subtract our direct fixed expenses. Again, we have two types of direct fixed expenses given here. The fixed manufacturing overhead total is 90,000. So I'm going to subtracting this 90,000, and then I will subtract our direct fixed operating expense, and the total budgeted one was 16,000. So I'm subtracting these two. So if you subtract this 90,000 and 16,000 from this 473,200, but I got my budgeted segment margin at 367,200. And now we will subtract our common fixed expense, which is the common fixed expense allocated to this pharmaceutical department is 14,000. And if you subtract this, then let's subtract this 14,000 from the segment margin. That means 367,200. I got 353,200. This is my budgeted operating income. Now what we need to do, we need to compare the actual performance against the budgeted performance. And the difference first we'll identify, and we will call it variance, and then we'll check whether it's a favorable or unfavorable one. So first let's try to find the difference. Let's do the actual minus budgeted for all these items. But remember, you don't need to worry about the sign. Don't put any sign, just take the absolute values of those differences. For example, for the actual one, subtract this 866, 320 minus 773, 500. And I found the variance, which is 92,820. 92,820. And later we'll figure out the favorable and unfavorable part, but first just try to take the difference. Ignore the sign totally, just write down the absolute values of those differences. For variable cost of goods sold, the difference I found 6,825. For our variable operating expense, the difference is 1,638. Now, if you figure out your contribution margin difference, if you take the difference 568.33 minus 473,200, I found 87,633. Now let's take the direct fixed expense difference. It's simple, you can see From here, it's 6,300. And if you take the difference between the actual and budgeted for this direct fixed operating expense, I found 1,280. And the segment margin difference is actually I found 80,053. And for the last item, last expense item, common fixed item, the difference is 140. Again, I'm ignoring all signs, it's just the absolute value. And for the operating income number, the difference I found is 79,913. So once we figure out all these differences, now we will try to apply our common sense and we will write it down whether it's a favorable one or an unfavorable one. So for sales items or margin items, any type of items that actually increase your operating income, remember actual is the better. On the other hand, for any type of expenses, if actual is higher, then it's actually bad for you. So I'm repeating, sales revenue, any type of margin or any item that actually increases your operating income, higher is the better. Right. On the other hand, for expenses, actually, if the actual one is higher, it's not good for you. It's actually unfavorable. So you're always looking into our actual numbers and comparing with the budgeted one. So let's see for the sales revenue. So actual sales revenue is higher than the budgeted one. Of course, it's a good thing. So I'll call it a favorable one. Now, cost of goods sold. Remember, cost of goods sold is an expense. Now compare this to actual versus budgeted. Actual expense is higher than the budgeted one. So it's an unfavorable one. And now we will compare variable operating expense. Again, it's an expense. So if your actual expense is higher than the budgeted one, it's not good for you. If actual is actually lower than the budgeted one, then it's good for you. So now let's compare these two numbers and you see the actual number is lower than the budgeted number. So we will call it a favorable variance. Now let's check contribution margin. Remember, again, sales, contribution margin, segment margin, or operating income, or any type of items that actually increases your income. Higher is the better. If actual is the higher, then it's better for you. So if you compare these two contribution margin numbers, you'll see the actual one is 560,833 and the budgeted one is 473,200. That means your actual contribution margin is higher, so we'll call it as a favorable variance. Now let's try to focus on our two direct fixed expenses. One is our direct fixed manufacturing overhead expense, another is direct fixed operating expense. For both of these direct fixed expenses, you will see that actual numbers are higher than the budgeted numbers. So for expense item, if actual is higher than the budgeted one, then it's not good for you. So it will be an unfavorable one. So both actual numbers are actually higher than the budgeted numbers. So both will be unfavorable. Again, now we can compare the segment margin, and segment margin is the income or the item that actually increases your operating income. And if you compare these two numbers, actual number is higher than the budgeted one, so it is a favorable one. The last expense item is the common fixed expense. It's expense item, and compare the actual versus budgeted. Actual expense is higher than the budgeted one, so it's unfavorable. I'm repeating, if sales revenue, margin, or any type of item that increases your operating income and you see that the actual numbers are higher than the budgeted one, then it will be a favorable item. On the other hand, if you see for expense items, the actual numbers are lower than the budgeted one, then it will be favorable. If actual numbers are higher than the budgeted one, then it will be unfavorable. So this is how you can apply your judgment and you can check your variances. So the last item is our operating income, and operating income, you see the actual number is actually higher than the budgeted numbers, so we'll call it as a favorable one. Now we're gonna do the variance percentage. How you can do the percentage? So percentage is very simple. We will just express this variance in terms of these budgeted numbers. So for example, for sales revenue, our variance is 92,820. Now I'll divide it by our budgeted numbers, and then this is how I'll express it as a percentage of the budgeted number. So let's do it. 92,820 divided by 773 500, and if you check it, I found it's 12%. And you also need to write down the favorable and unfavorable, and it's the same. But don't worry, there will be no change. So for the last column, you just explain the percentage. Again, take this variance and then divide by the budgeted numbers, and don't worry about the signs. And if you find any fraction, you can just round it out. Now the variable operating expense, for the variable cost of goods sold, I divided and I find it's 5%. For the variable operating expense, 1,638 divided by 163,800, and I found the variance in terms of percentage is 1%. And for contribution margin, take this difference, 87,633 divided by 473,200. I found it 18.52%. And now let's do this direct fixed manufacturing overhead. Take this 6,300, then divide it by 90,000, so we'll get 7%. Now, next item is direct fixed operating expense. Take the variance 1,280 divided by 16,000, and I got it's 8%. Segment margin, take this difference 80,050 and divide it by 367,200, and I got as a percentage 21.8%. And for common fixed expense, 140 divided by 14,000, and it's 1%. And then the last item, operating income, 79,913 divided by 353,200, and I got 22.63%. So this is how you will prepare your variances. And that's your problem. So you need to do basically two income statements, then find out the difference, then identify whether it's a favorable or an unfavorable one, and then express it in terms of percentage. So that's your problem. Please do another homework problem. Thank you.